True story, my son called me worthless. He regretted it when my will. Have you ever poured your entire being, your very soul, into someone, only to have them casually dismiss you as worthless? Have you ever watched your hard-earned life savings, meticulously accumulated over decades, disappear into the insatiable maw of someone else's endless desires, leaving you feeling empty and used? And when that moment of ultimate betrayal finally arrives, when the mask slips and you see the true, cold calculus of their ingratitude, what then? What would you do when the very people you loved more than life itself, the very people you sacrificed everything for, reveal just how little they value you, or your sacrifice? I have felt that, every agonizing breath of it. And that feeling, that gut-wrenching, soul-crushing realization, it taught me the biggest, most painful lesson of my life. It changed me, irrevocably. And I wonder, truly, what would you have done in my shoes? It was a Tuesday morning. I remember it with unnerving clarity, every detail etched into my memory like a scar. The sun, usually a cheerful harbinger of a new day, streamed through my kitchen window, casting long, golden stripes across the worn oak floor. Outside, the birds sang, a symphony of innocent joy, but inside me, it was a tempest. A Category 5 hurricane of disbelief and profound, agonizing hurt was brewing, its winds already beginning to howl through the quiet corridors of my heart. I was just making my usual morning tea, a simple ritual that typically brought a quiet peace, a gentle start to my day. The warmth of the mug in my hands, the comforting aroma of Earl Grey, it was my moment of serene solitude, a small island of calm in a life that had often felt like a turbulent sea. I was stirring in a dollop of honey, watching it swirl and dissolve, when my phone buzzed on the counter. It was a picture message from my granddaughter, Lily. She's a sweet girl, Lily, or at least, I always thought she was, a beacon of childhood innocence that I desperately clung to amidst the growing cynicism that had begun to creep into my later years. The picture showed her, Jackson, my son, and Serafina, his wife, all beaming, their faces radiant with unbridled joy. They were standing on the polished deck of what looked like the most magnificent yacht I had ever seen, a vision of impossibly white luxury against the endless sapphire blue of the ocean stretching out behind them. The yacht itself was a floating palace, sleek and impossibly luxurious, with towering masts and gleaming chrome railings. It was something out of a dream, or perhaps, a billionaire's fantasy. Beneath the picture, Lily had typed, her words seemingly innocent, yet laced with a casual cruelty that would twist the knife deeper than any overt insult could have, "Grandma, look. We're having the best time on our family yacht trip. Wish you were here, but Mom said it was strictly family only this time, and you know, sometimes you just can't keep up with us anymore. Next time, maybe." My hands, which had moments ago been so steady as I stirred my tea, started to tremble so violently, I almost dropped my favorite ceramic mug. Strictly family only? Can't keep up? The words echoed in the hollow cavern of my mind, each syllable a hammer blow. They were on a yacht. A luxurious yacht. My mind reeled, trying to reconcile the image of their opulent vacation with the growing dread that was now a cold, icy certainty forming in the pit of my stomach. This wasn't just any yacht trip. This was my money. The money I had meticulously, lovingly saved and invested over decades, penny by hard-earned penny. The money I had, only weeks before, transferred to Jackson's account for family investments, a new, grand business venture he had enthusiastically pitched, promising huge returns, promising it was for all of us. He'd sat at my kitchen table, just where I stood now, spreadsheets spread out before us, his eyes alight with a fervent, almost childlike enthusiasm. He spoke of diversifying the family's assets, securing our legacy, building something truly monumental for generations to come. And like a fool, a complete and utter fool, I had believed him. Every word. I had seen him as my ambitious, forward-thinking son, not the calculating parasite he was. I remember staring at that picture, my breath catching in my throat, each inhale a shallow, painful gasp. Lily's bright, innocent face, so full of genuine joy, twisted into something else in my mind, a reflection of their casual cruelty, a stark reminder of their profound lack of empathy. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to drive the nail in further, To ensure I understood the full depths of their disdain, another notification popped up. It was a short video clip, also from Lily, clearly taken by Serafina. The camera panned slowly, deliberately, across the shimmering deck, the crystal-clear water lapping gently against the hull, the lavish spread of food and champagne artfully arranged on a teak table. And then, I heard Jackson's voice. Clear as a bell, dismissive, dripping with a cold disdain that chilled me to the very bone, as if an icy hand had just gripped my heart. Honestly, Mother, he scoffed, his voice echoing slightly in the open air, a sound utterly devoid of warmth or affection, you're worthless if you can't even keep up with us. This is the life. This is what you work for, isn't it? Just imagine if she tried to climb these stairs, or get into one of these tenders. It's just too much for her now. Better this way. Serafina giggled in the background. A light, airy sound, like wind chimes, that somehow cut through me sharper than any knife. My son. My own son. The child I had carried, nurtured, sacrificed for. He thought I was worthless. He thought I couldn't keep up. He had taken my generosity, my life's work, everything I had, and used it to fund a lavish trip without me, while ridiculing me behind my back. He had excluded me from my own money's indulgence, transforming my sacrifice into an instrument of my humiliation. The sheer audacity, the callousness, the unbridled ingratitude, it was a physical blow. I felt the air leave my lungs in a ragged gasp. My knees buckled slightly, a sudden weakness making my legs give way, and I had to lean against the cold kitchen counter, clutching the ceramic mug, my knuckles white, my entire body trembling. Worthless? Me? The woman who had given them everything? The woman who had sacrificed her own dreams so they could chase theirs? The woman who had worked tirelessly, saved diligently, believed in them implicitly, even when red flags screamed at me? This wasn't just a slight. This wasn't just an oversight. This was a deliberate act of malice, designed to hurt, to exclude, to diminish. And to mock. It was the absolute final straw. The thread, so thin and frayed for so long, held together by years of hope and illusion, finally, irrevocably snapped. And in that moment, as the shattered remnants of my heart lay exposed, a quiet, steel-hard resolve began to form. They wanted to know what worthless truly meant. Oh, they were about to find out. So how did we get here, you ask? How did a mother, who loved her children more than life itself, end up being called worthless by her own son, abandoned on the shore while he sailed away on a luxury yacht funded by her? It wasn't a sudden fall, you see. It was a slow, insidious erosion, like water wearing away stone, drop by relentless drop. 1,000 tiny cuts, 1,000 unspoken expectations, 1,000 moments where my boundless love was mistaken for a limitless bank account. It started subtly, as these things often do, cloaked in the guise of ambition and filial affection. When Jackson was young, he was a truly bright boy, full of ambition, his eyes sparkling with dreams of success. He wanted the best education, the best opportunities, and he was so charmingly persuasive when he spoke of his future. And I, a single mother who had worked her fingers to the bone since his father passed when Jackson was just a teenager, wanted nothing more than to see him succeed. I had taken on extra shifts at the hospital, where I worked as a nurse, and then, after my long days, I'd come home and take on freelance medical transcription projects late into the night. I scrimped and saved every penny, patching up worn clothes, rarely eating out, foregoing any personal indulgences. His university tuition? I paid it all, every cent of it, even when wise friends, seeing my struggle, gently suggested he take out student loans, to learn a bit of financial responsibility. No, I'd insisted, my voice firm with maternal pride, he'll start his life debt-free. That's my gift to him, a solid foundation. Was it a mistake? In hindsight, perhaps. But at the time, it felt like the purest expression of a mother's love, a selfless act of devotion. Then came the first house. Oh, it was a beautiful place, a sprawling 4-bedroom colonial in a lovely, leafy suburb, far grander than anything I had ever lived in. Jackson and Serafina, fresh out of college, wanted to buy a home, to start their lives properly, but the market was tough, and their entry-level salaries were meager. "Mother," Jackson had said, his eyes earnest, almost puppy-dog sincere, "we just need a little boost. A down payment. We'll pay you back, I promise, as soon as my business takes off." And I did it. I dipped into my retirement savings, a significant sum I had been building carefully since my early 20s, to give them that leg up. It was nearly half of what I had, but their happiness, their comfort, seemed paramount. They never paid me back. Not a cent. When I gently brought it up once, a year later, just a casual mention, Serafina looked at me with wide, innocent eyes, a perfect picture of wounded surprise, and said, "Oh, Alara, darling, we thought that was a gift. For us, your only son, to have a comfortable start. You wouldn't want us living in a tiny apartment, would you? It's just so, not us." And I, foolishly, weakly, let it go. What was a little money, compared to their happiness? That's what I told myself, trying to soothe the prickle of unease that had begun to surface. As the years went on, the little boosts became bigger, and far more frequent, each one cloaked in a new, more elaborate justification. Jackson decided to start his own business, a tech startup, he called it, always just on the cusp of revolutionizing some industry or another. He needed seed money. A lot of seed money. He painted such a vivid picture of success, of how this would secure all our futures, how I would finally be able to stop working and live in luxury alongside them. I was so convinced by his passion, his elaborate presentations, his earnest pleas, that I mortgaged my own small, modest, but cherished paid-off home. I cashed in some of my blue-chip stocks, sold off municipal bonds I had held for decades. I truly believed in him, you see, believed in his vision, in his potential. He was so passionate, so convincing, so utterly charming when he wanted to be. He promised me a share of the profits, a director's fee, a secure future. He even drafted impressive-looking legal documents, which I, in my naive trust, barely read. The business never really took off. It limped along for a few years, a constant, insidious drain on more and more capital, always just needing one more injection to turn the corner. Eventually, he just, quietly closed it down. The money was gone. All of it. And when I asked about my investment, my share, my future, he just shrugged, a dismissive gesture that spoke volumes. "Mother, these things happen. Business is risky. But you know, it was a great learning experience for me. A learning experience for him, at the astronomical cost of my financial security, leaving my own home once again carrying a burdensome mortgage." Then came the grandchildren. Oh, how I adored them. Lily and Max. They were the light of my life, the innocent joy that still made all the sacrifices seem worthwhile. And I wanted them to have everything. But everything quickly morphed into extravagance, fueled by Serafina's relentless social climbing and Jackson's misguided notions of wealth management. Serafina insisted on the most exclusive private schools, schools with tuition fees that rivaled a small university, the most expensive tutors for every subject, designer clothes that cost more than my monthly pension. "Alara, darling," she'd coo, her voice dripping with syrupy sweetness, "we just want the best for your grandchildren. And they deserve it, don't they? It's an investment in their future. All the best families send their children there." And because I loved those children so fiercely, because I didn't want them to feel deprived or less than their affluent peers, I opened my wallet again and again, signing checks that made my hand tremble. Their allowances, which started out reasonable for children, ballooned into exorbitant sums. A teenager receiving $500 a week for pocket money? It felt insane, a profligate waste, but Jackson would wave his hand dismissively. "Mother, it teaches them about managing wealth. They're going to inherit a fortune one day, they need to practice." A fortune I was still working tirelessly to build for them, a fortune that seemed to exist only in his imagination, or on my bank statements. The luxury cars were next. Jackson always had to have the latest model, the flashiest SUV, the most ostentatious display of wealth. "Image is everything in business, Mother," he'd declare, polishing the chrome emblem of a new Mercedes. People won't take me seriously if I'm not driving something respectable. And of course, he couldn't possibly afford the astronomical lease payments on his own, not with his volatile income and temporary cash flow issues. So, I found myself co-signing, then eventually, just outright paying for them. The sleek German sedans, the enormous SUVs that barely fit in my modest driveway, parked there as if I were their personal chauffeur service, a silent testament to my continued financial subjugation. And Serafina, not to be outdone, soon needed her own luxury vehicle. My friends all have them, Alara, she'd sigh dramatically, it's simply embarrassing for me to drive anything less. I feel like a pauper. My modest car, a reliable but old Toyota sedan, suddenly felt like a badge of shame in their presence, a stark contrast to their gleaming, expensive toys. Vacations, oh, the vacations. They were always grand affairs, meticulously planned and lavishly executed. Ski trips to Aspen with private chalets, summer holidays in the Hamptons where they rented sprawling estates, cruises through the Mediterranean on ships that looked like floating cities. And guess who was footing the entire bill? Mother, you've always wanted to see the Swiss Alps, haven't you? This is our gift to you, coming with us, they'd say, their voices full of feigned generosity. But then the bills would arrive, enormous, overwhelming, and it was always my credit card that was quietly, discreetly, used for everything. They would present me with receipts for their designer ski gear, their lavish dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants, their private excursions, and I'd just sigh, a defeated sound, and pay. It wasn't a gift for me. It was an expectation that I would fund their entire lifestyle, an endless well of cash that they believed would never run dry. And I started to notice how little interest they had in my well-being, my own life, my dreams. Conversations were always steered back to their needs, their desires, their latest problem that inevitably needed a financial solution. My life, my friends, my quiet joys, were never a topic of genuine interest. I remember once, I had a health scare. Nothing life-threatening, thankfully, but it was serious enough to require surgery and a period of recovery that left me weak and vulnerable. I called Jackson, hoping for a bit of support, perhaps a visit, a comforting word. He sounded distracted, his voice already miles away. "Oh, Mother, I'm so sorry, but Serafina and I are just about to leave for that charity gala. It's so important for networking, you know, vital for the new business contacts. Can we talk later? I'll call you as soon as we're back." Later never came. The call never materialized. It was my neighbor, the kind and stoic Mrs. Henderson, a woman I barely knew beyond polite waves, who checked on me daily, brought me warm meals, and drove me to my follow-up appointments. That's when I started to feel a flicker of resentment. A tiny spark of recognition that I was being not just used, but utterly disregarded. The mansion they lived in, that beautiful, sprawling house they called home? The mortgage payments, month after month, mysteriously fell to me. "We're just a little tight this quarter, Mother," Jackson would say, his tone laced with a practiced regret. "Investment returns are down, you understand, just a temporary blip. We'll get it back to you, promise." And I would understand. Or rather, I would pretend to understand, because what else could I do? Let them lose their home? Let my grandchildren suffer the indignity of moving? My love, my irrational fear of their hardship, became their ultimate leverage. Over the years, the respect, the gratitude I once saw in their eyes, vanished entirely. It was replaced by a sense of entitlement so profound, so absolute, it was almost breathtaking. My advice was dismissed, my opinions ignored, my very presence tolerated only when money was involved. I was merely the provider, the ATM, a resource to be tapped, a convenient solution to all their financial woes. I became Mother, spoken with a weary sigh, or a demanding tone, rather than Mom, spoken with affection. And I, fool that I was, kept giving, because I was terrified of what would happen if I stopped. Terrified of their disapproval, terrified of losing what little connection we had left, terrified of the scathing words and cold silences. I clung to the desperate hope that one day, they would see, they would appreciate, they would remember everything I had done, the mountain of sacrifices. That hope, my friends, was a cruel mistress. It kept me trapped, years and years of quiet desperation, of feeling less and less like myself, until that yacht trip, that picture, that video, and that single, cutting word, worthless. It was a culmination, a brutal awakening that finally shattered the illusion. And suddenly, I knew. I knew I couldn't go on like this. The well had to run dry. And they had to learn what it felt like to be truly without. What would you have done? Honestly, tell me. How much more could you take? How many more times could you hear your own worth diminished, your sacrifices trivialized, your love exploited beyond recognition? I had spent years, decades even, allowing myself to be walked over, to be a silent, endlessly giving ATM. I'd rationalized it, excused it, told myself it was for their happiness, for the family's future, for the grandchildren. But that word. Worthless. It echoed in my ears, bouncing off the walls of my quiet kitchen, a cruel, mocking refrain. And then, the image of them, laughing on that yacht, a monument to their indulgence, paid for by me, while I sat alone in my quiet kitchen, drinking my tea, feeling the chill of their disdain, that was it. The pain was so sharp, so searing, it cut through all the lingering shreds of guilt and fear I had carried for so long. I stood there for what felt like an eternity, clutching that mug, the cold ceramic a faint anchor in the violent storm raging within me. My heart ached, a deep, hollow ache that felt like a gaping wound, bleeding out years of suppressed emotion. But beneath the pain, something else was stirring. A cold, hard anger. A righteous fury that had been simmering for years, suppressed by my own desperate desire for their fleeting affection and empty approval. It was a strange feeling, this anger. It wasn't volatile or destructive, it was quiet, resolute, like steel hardening in a forge. It felt empowering. It felt like the truest part of me, long buried, was finally clawing its way to the surface. I asked myself, my voice a whisper in the silent room, Alara, how much more of yourself are you willing to lose? Are you going to die having given everything, only to be remembered as a convenient wallet, a doormat? The answer, clear and resounding in my mind, was no. A single, defiant no. A roar from the depths of my soul. I had given them my youth, my prime earning years, my entire savings, my peace of mind. I had given them a life of luxury, while I lived modestly, always putting their needs before my own. And what had I received in return? Scorn. Disrespect. And that dismissive, hateful word. The decision didn't come easily in terms of emotion, no, the emotional struggle had been a lifetime in the making. But once the emotional barrier broke, once that final thread snapped, the practical decision was swift. Clear. Unambiguous. There was no more internal conflict about if I should do it, only how. I was done. Absolutely, irrevocably done. I walked over to my small, somewhat cluttered desk in the corner of the living room. It was where I paid my bills, wrote letters, kept my few treasured mementos. My hand still trembled slightly from the aftershocks of the revelation, but there was a newfound steadiness in my purpose, a quiet strength I hadn't known I possessed. I pulled out my old, well-worn address book, its pages dog-eared with years of use. My financial advisor, Mr. Davies, had been with me since my husband passed. He was a kind, astute man, always impeccably dressed, who had always, gently, advised me against certain, generously large decisions, though I rarely listened, blinded by my love and hope. He knew the extent of my giving. He had seen the monthly transfers, the requests for large sums. He had seen my accounts dwindle, his polite concern thinly veiled. And then, my lawyer, Mrs. Albright. Eleanor. She was sharp, no nonsense, and incredibly discreet, a formidable woman in her tailored suits. Two people I trusted implicitly, two people who had seen my financial life unfold, who knew the truth of my increasingly precarious situation. I picked up the phone. My fingers hovered over the numbers. There was a brief moment of hesitation, a tiny voice in the back of my head whispering, "Are you sure, Alara? What about the grandchildren? What about family?" But then I remembered Jackson's sneer, Seraphina's saccharine giggle, Lily's cruelly innocent text. And that voice was silenced, replaced by the roar of my new resolve. This wasn't about spite. This wasn't about revenge. It was about self-preservation. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my autonomy, my very soul. I called Mr. Davies first. His assistant answered, her voice chipper, and I asked to speak to him urgently. When he came on the line, his voice was calm, professional, yet tinged with a familiar underlying concern. "Elara, is everything all right?" "No, Mr. Davies," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, despite the lump that had formed in my throat, threatening to choke me. "Nothing is all right. But it's about to be. I need to make some immediate, significant changes to my financial portfolio. I need to reallocate everything. And I mean everything." He paused, a long, telling silence. He knew what everything meant, given my history with Jackson. "Are you talking about cutting off the transfers, Elara?" he asked, his voice softening, betraying his deep concern for my well-being. "More than that," I replied, my gaze fixed on a framed photo of my late husband, his smiling face a silent encouragement from across the years. "I want to set up a charitable foundation. The bulk of my liquid assets, my investments, everything that's not absolutely essential for my own secure future care, I want it diverted there. Immediately. And I want to set up a personal trust for myself, completely separate, completely untouchable, to ensure I'm taken care of for the rest of my days, no matter what happens, no matter who tries what. Everything else, Jackson's mortgage payments, the car leases, the grandchildren's allowances, all of it. Cut off. Effective immediately. No more payments from my accounts. Nothing. And I want it done today." There was another long silence on the other end, heavier this time. I could almost hear the gears turning in his astute mind, processing the sheer magnitude of my request. "Elara," he finally said, his voice grave, "this is a very drastic step. Are you certain about this? Once these assets are moved into a foundation, it's virtually impossible to retrieve them for personal use." "Never been more certain in my life, Mr. Davies," I said, a wave of cold, clear certainty washing over me, washing away all lingering doubt. "And I need your help to make sure it's watertight. I don't want any loopholes. I don't want any way for anyone to access these funds or undo this decision. I want it ironclad." He sighed, a sound of profound understanding, perhaps even a little relief that I was finally taking control. "Understood, Elara. I'll start the process right away. It will take a little time for some of the larger transfers to the foundation, but the immediate cessation of all direct payments can be done by end of day. And I'll contact my legal department to draft the trust and foundation documents. Do you want to discuss specific beneficiaries for the foundation at this stage?" "Not yet," I said. "Just set it up. I'll decide the specific charities later. But it needs to be established and funded. And the personal trust must be irrevocable, ensuring my own peace of mind for the rest of my days." "Consider it done," he assured me, his voice now crisp and efficient. "I'll be in touch with the paperwork for your signature this afternoon." As soon as I hung up with Mr. Davies, I dialed Mrs. Albright, my lawyer. "Eleanor," I began, using her first name, something I rarely did, a signal of the gravity of the situation, "I need to discuss my will, my estate, and a few other pressing matters. I'm making some fundamental changes. And I need ironclad legal protection for myself and my assets. I want to ensure that certain individuals have no claim, no access, and no future entitlement to anything I possess. I'm thinking about disinheritance, a very clear and undeniable one, for my son and his wife. And I want to ensure my grandchildren have a future, but not one built on my current assets, and certainly not one their parents can touch." She listened, as always, without interruption, her silence more attentive than most people's chatter. She was a master of quiet contemplation. When I finished, she said, her voice devoid of judgment, only pragmatic clarity, "Elara, this is a significant move. Are you prepared for the fallout? For their reaction?" "I am," I said, my voice unwavering, laced with a newfound steel. "I'm prepared for anything." I just want it done correctly, legally, and swiftly. I want to protect what little I have left for myself, and to ensure that my future legacy is one of genuine help to those in need, not of enabling parasitic behavior. Very well, she said, her voice sharp and efficient. I'll draft the necessary amendments to your will, start the process for a new, robust power of attorney that safeguards your wishes against any challenge, and we can discuss the specifics of the disinheritance. We'll also structure any future provisions for your grandchildren that don't involve direct access to your current estate, ensuring their parents have no way to interfere. This will require some detailed work, but I can assure you, it will be comprehensive and legally sound. Thank you, Eleanor, I said, feeling a colossal weight begin to lift from my shoulders, a crushing burden I hadn't fully realized I was carrying until that very moment. Just make it happen. Hanging up the phone, I looked out the kitchen window again. The sun still shone brightly, painting the world in warm hues, but now, it felt different. Not a mocking glare, but a warm, hopeful embrace, a gentle affirmation of my decision. The storm inside me hadn't fully passed, the pain lingered, a dull throb in my chest, but a new, powerful resolve had taken root. I had done it. I had taken the first decisive step towards reclaiming my life, my dignity, my future. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that the true storm was yet to come. The calm before the inevitable, devastating financial hurricane that was about to hit Jackson and Serafina. And I was ready for it. What would their faces look like when the bills stopped being paid? What would they do when the well ran dry? For the first time, I found myself almost curious. Of course, my decision was going to have consequences, wasn't it? I wasn't naive enough to think they would simply shrug, accept their sudden penury, and move on. Oh no. I knew them too well, had studied their entitlement for decades. Their panic, their profound sense of victimhood, their absolute reliance on my money, their belief that it was their birthright, it was a carefully constructed house of cards, and I had just pulled out the foundation. I didn't have to wait long. It started subtly at first, a few days after I had made those calls, the quiet before the storm. I received a text from Jackson. "Mother, the mortgage payment hasn't gone through. Did you forget? The bank is calling, quite insistent." I didn't reply. Then, Serafina called, her voice a little sharper than usual, her sweet facade beginning to crack. "Elara, darling, the lease payment for Jackson's car bounced. And mine too. There must be some mistake with the bank, can you check? It's so embarrassing." I let the phone ring, watching the screen light up with her name, feeling a strange mixture of apprehension and grim satisfaction. Then came the calls about Lily and Max's allowances. "Grandma, my card was declined at the mall." "What's going on?" Lily's voice sounded genuinely bewildered, a note of confused panic, and for a fleeting moment, a pang of guilt, sharp and quick, shot through me. My beloved granddaughter. But then I remembered their faces on that yacht, their casual cruelty, Jackson's sneering words, and the pang subsided, replaced by a hardened resolve. This was a consequence of their actions, not mine. This was the harvest of the seeds they had sown. The trickle of concerned calls quickly turned into a flood of increasingly frantic, angry messages. Accusations, demands, thinly veiled threats began to pepper my voicemail. They were not just losing money, they were losing control, and they hated it. Then, about a week after the initial shockwaves hit, they showed up. All of them. Jackson, his face already red with suppressed fury, Serafina, her perfect composure utterly shattered, even Lily and Max, looking bewildered and anxious, their faces pale, sensing the enormous tension that hung in the air. Their luxury SUV was parked haphazardly in my driveway, half on the lawn, the engine still running, as if they'd abandoned it in a desperate rush, unable to wait another second. The doorbell rang, a frantic, insistent peal, startlingly loud in my quiet home. I took a deep, steadying breath. This was it. The moment I had prepared for, mentally, emotionally, for days, visualizing every possible scenario. I walked to the door, opened it slowly, deliberately, and simply stood there, observing them, my face carefully neutral. Jackson was flushed, his usually composed, self-assured face contorted with anger and something akin to disbelief, as if the world had inexplicably turned upside down. Serafina, usually so perfectly coiffed, every hair in place, had strands escaping her bun, her eyes wide with a desperate mixture of panic and fury. Her designer handbag, usually clutched so protectively, hung limp by her side. Lily and Max stood behind them, their faces pale, looking from their enraged parents to me, clearly sensing the enormous, suffocating tension, the seismic shift in their world. "Mother! What in God's name is going on?" Jackson bellowed, pushing past me into the foyer without waiting for an invitation, his hand brushing roughly against my arm. Serafina followed close behind, practically shoving me aside, her designer heels clicking loudly on my hardwood floor. "Elara! What have you done? The bank just called, they're threatening foreclosure on the house. And they're repossessing the cars. Our credit is ruined. Our lives are ruined." Her voice rose to a near shriek, laced with genuine terror. I remained calm, my voice steady, almost eerily so, in stark contrast to their histrionics, a quiet anchor in their storm. "I haven't done anything, Jackson, Serafina," I said, my gaze sweeping over them, finally resting on Jackson's livid, sputtering face. "I simply stopped doing something." "Stopped doing what?" Jackson spat, his hands clenching into fists, his chest heaving with indignation. "Paying for our lives? Our home? Our children's future?" "Precisely," I said, my voice unwavering, a newfound clarity ringing in every syllable. "I stopped paying for your lives. I stopped paying for your home. I stopped paying for your children's exorbitant allowances, their private schools, their designer clothes, your luxury cars, your lavish vacations. Everything." Serafina let out a theatrical gasp, clutching her chest as if she'd been physically struck. But you can't. You promised. You always said you'd take care of us. That was the agreement. We relied on you." "Agreement?" I scoffed, a dry, bitter laugh escaping my lips, a sound I barely recognized as my own. "There was no agreement, Serafina. There was only my endless generosity, and your boundless entitlement. There was only my love and your exploitation. I worked hard my entire life. Your father and I built a nest egg, not for you to squander on yachts and luxury goods, but for my retirement, and to perhaps leave a modest legacy to my grandchildren. But you decided it was your personal ATM, didn't you? A bottomless pit you could draw from at will." Jackson stepped forward, his face inches from mine, his breath hot on my cheek. "This is insane, Mother. You've lost your mind. What about your obligations to your family? To your only son?" His voice was dangerously low, a clear threat. My eyes met his, and for the first time in years, I saw a flicker of something other than greed or entitlement in his gaze, a touch of genuine fear, raw and unmasked. "Good. My obligations?" I repeated, letting the words hang in the air, weighted with years of unspoken resentment. "My obligation, Jackson, was to raise a decent human being. To teach you responsibility, hard work, and gratitude. And where did I fail? Oh, right. I enabled you. I spoon-fed you a life of luxury, so you never had to lift a finger for yourselves. You never learned the value of a single penny because you never earned one that wasn't handed to you on a silver platter. But the yacht trip?" Serafina interjected, her voice wavering, attempting a manipulative turn, trying to twist the narrative one last time. "That was for you, Elara. A surprise. We were just testing it out, to make sure it was perfect for your birthday celebration next month. We wanted it to be a grand gesture." I laughed then, a sharp, disbelieving sound that held no mirth. "Don't insult my intelligence, Serafina. Don't take me for a fool any longer. You sent me a video, Lily's video, with Jackson's own words. Worthless if you can't even keep up with us. Better this way. Do you think I'm deaf? Do you think I'm a senile old woman? You funded a lavish trip with my money, excluded me, and then mocked me for it. That was the final insult. The very last drop in a bucket that has been overflowing with your ingratitude for years. It was the moment I finally saw you for who you truly are. Jackson's face went white, the blood draining from his features. He must have realized the extent of their blunder, the damning evidence they had unwittingly provided. Mother, you misunderstood. It was just a joke. A bad joke. You know how I am, always making light of things. His voice was desperate, pleading, but the words rang hollow. A joke? I raised an eyebrow, my voice hardening, each word a hammer blow of truth. Was it a joke when I paid for your first house, the down payment you never repaid? Was it a joke when I mortgaged my own modest home to fund your failed business venture, the one that left me with a debt that still lingers? Was it a joke when I paid for every single one of your luxury cars, year after year, replacing them like disposable toys? Was it a joke when I funded your children's extravagant allowances, their private school fees, their every whim, while you spent my money on endless vacations and designer clothes? Was it a joke when I was recovering from surgery, frail and alone, and you couldn't be bothered to visit, too busy with a charity gala you probably expected me to fund anyway? My voice rose slightly, but it was still controlled, laced with years of suppressed pain, a raw ache that finally found its voice. No, Jackson. It wasn't a joke. It was exploitation. And I was the one being exploited. For decades, I let you drain me dry, financially and emotionally, because I loved you. Because I hoped that one day, you would see, you would appreciate, you would understand what I was giving up for you. But you didn't. You saw me as an endless resource, a bottomless pit of money, a fool to be manipulated, a convenient stepping stone for your own selfish desires. Lily, my sweet granddaughter, suddenly burst into tears, her small voice cutting through the tense air, thick with unspoken accusations. Grandma, please. We'll lose everything. Our house, our cars. Max and I will have to leave our school. Please, don't do this to us. Her innocent tears tugged at my heart, twisting it with a familiar pain. My heart twisted, a sharp, agonizing pang, but I held firm. This was the hardest part, the part that threatened to break my resolve. Lily, Max, I said, looking at them, my voice softening slightly, but maintaining my unyielding resolve. This isn't about me doing something to you. This is about your parents finally having to take responsibility for their own lives, for their own choices. They chose this path. They chose to be dependent. They chose to live beyond their means, on my means, squandering my sacrifice. You are smart, resilient children. You will adapt. You will learn the value of hard work, something your parents never had to. Jackson, seeing that emotional manipulation wasn't working, shifted tactics, his desperation making him reckless. You're old, Mother. You're clearly not in your right mind. You're suffering from dementia. We'll have you declared incompetent. We'll get power of attorney. You can't just throw away our inheritance like this. This is our legacy. His words were sharp, threatening, desperate, a final, desperate lunge for control. I met his gaze, unflinching, a ghost of a smile playing on my lips. I'm old, yes, I said, my voice calm, almost serene, but I've never been clearer in my life. And I've already taken care of that, Jackson. My financial advisor and my lawyer have been busy. All my assets, except for a secure, irrevocable trust for my own care, have been reallocated to a charitable foundation. It's done. It's legally watertight. You have no claim. Nothing. Your inheritance, as you so delicately put it, has gone to help those who actually need it, those who truly struggle, not those who merely want it to fund a life of pampered idleness. As for incompetence, try it. My lawyers are prepared. You'll find I've never been more competent, more lucid, more in control of my own destiny. The color drained from their faces, leaving them ashen. Serafina let out a guttural sob, a raw, animal sound of despair. Jackson stood there, mouth agape, utterly defeated, his bluster gone, replaced by a terrible emptiness. The reality of their situation, the finality of my decision, had finally, truly sunk in. They were ruined. And it was their own doing. "Now," I said, my voice quiet but firm, my authority undeniable, "I think it's time you left. You have a lot to figure out. And I have a life to live. One that, for the first time in a very long time, is truly my own." They stumbled out, a broken, defeated mess, their designer clothes suddenly looking pathetic and out of place. The slamming of the car door echoed loudly in the sudden, profound silence of my home. The roar of the luxury SUV's engine as it sped away quickly faded into the distance. I stood in my foyer, alone, the quiet house suddenly feeling vast and empty, yet strangely, wonderfully, gloriously free. The confrontation was over. The battle was won. But what came next? What would become of them? And what, I wondered, would become of me? So, what happened next, you ask? Well, for Jackson and Serafina, the fall was swift and brutal, a public humiliation that matched their private cruelty. The bank did indeed foreclose on their sprawling mansion. The luxury cars were repossessed, towed away ignominiously. The carefully constructed facade of their opulent life crumbled in a matter of weeks, leaving them exposed and vulnerable. They had nowhere to go, no savings, no fallback, having spent everything on fleeting luxuries. They tried everything, calling me incessantly, sending manipulative letters filled with hollow apologies and desperate pleas, even having mutual friends intervene, but I steadfastly refused to engage. My lawyer, Mrs. Albright, handled all communication, politely but firmly reiterating my decision, a stone wall against their desperation. They ended up having to move into a much smaller, rented apartment in a less desirable part of town, a stark contrast to their previous grand lifestyle. Jackson, who had never truly held a steady job that wasn't funded by me or built on my investments, struggled immensely to find work. His business acumen proved useless without my capital. Serafina, who had spent her days at exclusive lunches, planning lavish parties, and shopping sprees, found herself having to learn how to cook, clean, and manage a household budget, skills she utterly lacked. Their lives became, as they dramatically put it in a tearful voicemail, a nightmare. Lily and Max, bless their hearts, had to transfer to a public school, a massive culture shock from their elite private education. It was hard on them, of course. My heart ached for them, truly it did, these innocent casualties of their parents' greed. But I knew this was a necessary, albeit painful, lesson for their parents. And perhaps, for them too, a chance to understand real life, real struggle, real worth, something money could never buy. I did, through my lawyer, set up a small, modest trust for their education only, accessible when they were of age, contingent on them maintaining good grades and pursuing higher education. It was structured in such a way that their parents couldn't touch a cent, nor could they influence its use. It was my quiet way of ensuring they had a safety net, but one they would have to work towards, not simply inherit. As for me, my life, paradoxically, became free. The weight I had carried for so long, that crushing burden of their expectations and my own enabling guilt, was gone. It was replaced by a lightness I hadn't felt in years, a profound sense of relief that settled deep in my bones. With my own finances securely managed within my personal trust, I no longer worried about every phone call, every unexpected visit, every new, exorbitant request. I felt liberated. I started taking long walks in the park every morning, something I hadn't had the time or energy for in ages. The crisp morning air, the rustle of leaves underfoot, the simple beauty of nature became a profound source of solace. I joined a book club at the local library, making new friends who knew nothing of my past struggles, only of my present, calm demeanor, my quiet joy. I even took up painting again, a hobby I had loved in my youth but abandoned when life, and Jackson's relentless demands, became too overwhelming. I painted landscapes, abstracts, vibrant colors that reflected the life finally blooming within me. My small home, once feeling like a prison of my own making, now felt like a sanctuary. It was tidy, peaceful, filled with my own interests and hobbies, not their discarded luxury items or the ghosts of their endless demands. The quiet, for so long a source of profound loneliness, became a comforting companion. I spent my days reading, creating, volunteering a few hours a week at a local animal shelter, a cause the charitable foundation I established now supports significantly. It felt good, truly good, to see my money making a tangible difference in the lives of others, in the lives of vulnerable animals, instead of funding frivolous indulgences and deepening an endless sense of entitlement. I learned so much through this painful ordeal. I learned that love, true love, is not about endless giving and self-sacrifice to the point of self-annihilation. It's about respect, about boundaries, about allowing others to grow, even if that growth comes through hardship. I learned that sometimes, the greatest act of love, for yourself and for others, is to say no. To draw a line in the sand. To step back and allow consequences to unfold, no matter how uncomfortable, no matter how painful the process might be for everyone involved. And I realized the greatest gift you can give someone isn't money, but the opportunity to stand on their own 2 feet, to learn resilience, to build their own worth from within. Because true worth, I discovered, isn't measured in yachts or mansions or designer labels. It's measured in integrity, in self-reliance, in the quiet dignity of knowing you can face the world on your own terms, with your head held high. And that, my friends, is a fortune no amount of money can buy. That was my story. It was hard to tell, harder to live, but I hope it resonates with some of you out there. Our channel is full of life lessons like this one, stories of overcoming adversity, of finding strength in unexpected places. If you found my story helpful, or if it simply made you think, please consider subscribing to our channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss our next story. And now, I want to hear from you. What do you think? Did I do the right thing? Was I too harsh, or was it long overdue? Share your thoughts with me in the comments below. I'll be reading all of them, and I truly value your perspective. Thank you for listening.